Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. We are absolutely delighted to have you here with us and very excited about the information that Eric is going to be sharing today. Eric Bloom is someone I've had the privilege of working with, and I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce him and tell you a little bit about him. Eric is the president and founder of Manager Mechanics. Prior to starting the company, he was a CIO level executive for the C-suite. He had 25 years of IT management experience. He is the author of a number of books, Manager Mechanics, Tips and Advice for First-Time Managers, Your IT Career, and then the CIO's Guide to Staff Needs, Growth, and Productivity. So he brings a wealth of insight and expertise to the table. Very much appreciate his willingness to take time with us and share with us today. Eric is the former program manager of the ASTD Greater Boston chapter. He is a nationally syndicated columnist with Gatehouse Media. And Eric created the e-learning to LMS platform. He gets LMS from the ground up because he created it. He is a certified professional coach with the Center for Coaching Certification, which is very exciting, of course, and the president-elect of the National Speakers Association in New England. So very excited to have him here. As Eric goes through his presentation today, I'm going to invite you to ask questions. The way you can do that is in your control panel. You have a place for typing in questions. The reason we're doing it that way is because we have too many people on the call to be able to unmute you. So by doing it that way, we make sure we manage background noise, that kind of thing. I will feed your questions to Eric as he goes through his presentation. And he has promised to be very attentive to giving you the information you want in this program. So Eric, welcome and thank you very much. Let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kathy, and hello to everyone that's online. As Kathy had mentioned, the title of our webinar today will be the LMS Identity Crisis, which basically, as you'll see, is that all LMSs are not created the same. Some are created for internal employee organizations, some for academic learners, and some for revenue production. Now, today's webinar in general will be broken into the following topics. We'll talk about some techie terms and definitions up front. The reason for that is as you're looking into LMSs or just sort of e-learning in general, there'll be a number of terms which will come up again and again and again. I promise you I'm not trying to make you techies. I'm just trying to give you a general understanding of what these terms mean. So you won't have what I like to call the deer in the headlights phenomenon when people start speaking about it. From there, what we'll do is we'll talk about the general terms that are in all LMSs. Like, for example, I'll give you one up front. They have to serve up e-learning content. If not, it's not going to be a very good e-learning / LMS platform. From there, what we'll do is we'll talk about the specialized LMS capabilities that are basically from different types of applications. For example, if you're using an LMS for, and by the way, I'll define that term also, but if you're using your LMS software as a way for you to generate revenue, then you need different features in it than, say, for example, you're the vice president of training at Staples and want to train your internal store managers. Is that there's some core functionality that's the same, but basically around the administration and the features and the connectivity and all those kind of things are very, very different. From there, we'll talk about some advanced features which are finding their ways into LMSs, such as gamification and things along that line. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll move to basically things that you should consider when you go toward buying one. Here, you know, I won't be telling you, I'll tell you up front, I will not be telling you buy this system or buy that system, because truthfully, it's not one size fits all. There are vendors who say that that's the case, but in fact it really isn't, quite frankly. And so what this will be is a list of, as it says, things to consider and options and things along that line based on what will best fit your business model. Now, let's get into some terms and definitions. What I'll try to do with these terms as I move into them, obviously HTML5 will be one of them, but if you want, I'm going to be describing them sort of in a pseudo non-techy way. If you have any questions at a deeper level, of course, as Kathy mentioned, please feel free to add them into the chat box, and you know, Kathy will be interrupting me to ask those questions as needed. Okay, what is an LMS? It actually stands for Learning Management System. You know, being in technology, of course, there needs to be acronyms. In fact, many, many years ago, very early in my career, I used to work for Digital Equipment Corporation, which in fact was called by an acronym, DEC, and everything there was 3, 4, or 5-letter words like this. In fact, we came up with a book was written internally there called DEC's TLA, and what a TLA was, it was the 3-letter acronym for 3-letter acronym. But anyway, is what an LMS system does is it really does the following 3 functions, if you think about it. It provides administration, and we'll be going through each one of these in detail. But at a high level, it does administration, which basically it lets you add users, put in content, do, you know, all of those things that basically are needed behind the scenes to integrate it into your business processes. The next thing it does is it does delivery and tracking. And by delivery and tracking, what we mean is that the delivery piece of is that it serves up content, it provides information. You know, it does what the typical user would think of from an LMS perspective. The tracking is it takes all the stuff of what people are doing and it saves them in a database. Why does it save them in a database? So that the administrator or whoever is working with that system, a client for example, can then get reporting and find out who's using it, how are they using it, why are they using it, etc. And as we get onto the reporting slide, you'll see there's actually a number of reasons why reporting is extremely important. Now, cloud-based. We're going to be.
Let me back up really quick. On
Sure.
the slide you said HTML, and then you had the number 5 after it. And so the question I've gotten is, what's the difference between HTML, which I understand to be computer language, and HTML5?
The basic difference is it's the newer version. What you think of as HTML right now is actually HTML4. So it's like you went from the iPhone 4 to the iPhone 5, which had the iPhone 5 had a little better camera in it, a few extra features. The box was a little more waterproof, that kind of thing. That's all HTML5 is. It's basically the marketing term for the advanced functionality that has been added to the existing markup language of within HTML. Now, what I will say, I'll just continue here for a sec because it's one of the items actually that was in our list. But what I'll say is why you're hearing HTML5 all the time, where over the years you've never heard of HTML3, HTML4, but poof, everything has a 5 on it now, is it's actually because of Apple. The reason is that, and we'll get into these terms a little bit more, but Apple will not allow, so that's on iPods and tablets and their phones, they will not allow Flash to run, which was another term we'll get to. But because of it is that a way to make your video run on an Apple iPad is by converting it to HTML5, which is a little bit of a misnomer because it's the video piece, but that's why you hear this term all the time. Thank you to whoever asked that. And again, we'll touch that sort of in order as we move forward. I think it's 1 slide down. Well, 2 slides down. But now cloud computing is that what cloud computing is that, you know, you hear the term everywhere. But basically what it means is that if you take your laptop and you bring it in a room that is with lead walls all around it, and there's no internet connection, and you can't connect by wireless, and the only things that work are physically on the box, on your laptop. You have no connectivity or communication to anything else in the world. All of those things you cannot get to are the cloud. Gmail is the cloud. You know, that your regular, whatever other email systems you're using. If you're using Dropbox, or you're accessing YouTube or Google, all of those are cloud-based applications. Sort of the definition being is they're not physically sitting on your PC, on the box. So, you know, is that that's sort of the broadest way. So basically is the look at the cloud as being almost everything. I'll use this term in relation to LMSs a little bit later when we talk about cloud-based or cloud-oriented or installed versions of software. But that's our definition of it for those who really aren't familiar with it. The next is open source. What open source is if you can believe it, there are consortiums of people who, most of which who do professional software development during the day, and then at night what they do is they do actually more complex versions of what they do during the day, but they do it for free as part of a community effort. And then what they do is once this brand new big piece of wonderful software that people around the world have been working on for, you know, a year, 2 years, however many years, is then what they do is they give it to people for free. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Pink, but if you are, he has a video on motivation that explains why people do this stuff. If you'll recognize it, it's based on his book Drive. And the video itself, it's had like millions of plays, it's someone writing on a whiteboard, drawing lots of pictures. And it's like really, really fast and explaining people's motivation as to why open source exists. But for this conversation, let's just know that it is. The reason that I'm including a discussion of open source is because there is a very popular open source LMS package called Moodle, M-O-O-D-L-E. It's done by the Moodle Consortium. Now, you might say, gee, there's a free LMS out there. Why don't I just go use it? Okay, you can download it. There are many local internet service providers which will host it for you. But the thing is you're going to want it branded for yourself. You're going to want it, you know, customized to use some of the features that you specifically need, things along that line. So as they say that if it seems too good to be true, that it's free. You know, my mother told me growing up, if it seems too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. So most people, virtually all, unless they have their own technical capabilities, if they're using open source platforms like Moodle for their LMS, then what they're doing is that they're hiring a company that they're paying to do the customization and ongoing management of it. So that's what an open source vendor is. It's basically software development consulting firms that you would hire so that you can take advantage of this free software. Next, class creation. Now, what I mean by that is that when you think of an LMS, think of it, or an LMS with e-learning, think of it from two perspectives. One perspective is the creation of the content, namely the e-learning class, the PowerPoint program that's beefed up and converted to some, you know, to Flash or MP4 or some other thing, but basically that's creating your e-learning content by itself. Now, most LMSs, there are two types of MLSs. Most of them, what they do is they assume that your content has already been built, and what they let you do is upload that software and then run it, you know, the class content. Some of them, however, incorporate into it the class creation capability, namely a PowerPoint type feature, or they integrate in other things that let you do it internally. Now, there's good and bad to that. The good is that you only have to go to only have to get one piece of software or one thing, so to speak. to be able to run it. The downside is if you ever want to change LMSs, you're never going to be able to do it because all of your e-learning content has been built on their platform. The typical platform products that you use to create traditional e-learning type products are what they call PowerPoint add-ins. Those include Captivate, what else? Camtasia. The one that we actually use is iSpring, which is a newer product, not as well known, but anyway, it's also about a third the price, which is one thing that I like about it. But it's really growing in popularity for a number of reasons. But what these do is you create it in PowerPoint, you enhance it with questions, and you may want to have with interactivity. You can also add into it branching. So if they click on this part, this button on the screen, it gives you this video, and that button, you go to that video, etc. But what you do is you create it in PowerPoint, then you compile it into a format that's ready to be uploaded into the LMS. I'm not going to get too much more into that. If you have questions, you could feel free to contact me after. But it's those typical kind of products. But that's an important distinction from an LMS perspective. Is it does it allow you to create the content, or does it merely or mostly just allow you to upload the content? The next is MOOC. MOOC, if you're not familiar with it, it is, I think the technical term for it, it is like the wicked coolest thing I've ever seen. What it stands for is Massive Open Online Course. And when you're hearing that University of Pennsylvania, like Penn State, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, all of these schools are putting their software, their class materials up for free on the web for people to be able to access at no cost. They're doing it through LMSs that are basically referred to as MOOC type functionality. Coursera is the one that I'm most familiar with. In fact, I wanted to get up to speed on gamification as part of our e-learning platform. We built it in. And one of the places that I went was Penn State. There was a professor there offering I think it was 6 or 7 week course for free that myself and 85,000 of my closest friends and relatives took that class where there were videos and then you could interact with people. So that is a different type of LMS but generally follows into the category. The next is HRIS, Human Resource Information System. This is not an LMS, but what it is it's all that other that HR functionality. The reason that this is here is because if you're working in a corporation, say for example I picked on Staples, so I'll pick on Office Depot this time. If you're working at Office Depot in their corporate headquarters, they or any other company, big company, is going to have software that knows who your employees are, what their performance reviews, how much they're paid, what's their job level, who do they report to, all of that general human resources information. That's contained in an HRIS system. The classic vendors for that would be Oracle, SAP. There are some others that fall into that space also. But the reason that that's here is because if your LMS is working in a corporate environment, then most likely you're going to want it to be able to integrate with your HRIS. Okay, now let's get into the video stuff and ties us back to HTML5 and MP4. What flashes, forgive me, I'm fighting off a drop of allergy here, I apologize. What flashes is, for the sake of this class, it's a way of programmatically creating video. That video can be created by, doing what you think of as classic computer programming. It can be done by creating a PowerPoint deck, either using PowerPoint automation or using the automation capabilities of Camtasia and iSpring and such like that. And then what it does is it creates a video with a WSF extension. What that actually stands for is shockwave. It was created originally by a company called Micromedia back in the in the dot-com days, I'm thinking 1996, 97, became the industry standard practically forever. Now, what's causing the industry to move away from Flash into the HTML5, which I mentioned, which more realistically or more correctly, they're moving from Flash to MP4. The reason for that is because of the popularity of the iPad. Everyone wanting to get their video and instructions and things to be working on the iPad because they're omnipresent now practically. And what happened is that Apple, or most specifically Steve Jobs, made the decision that he did not want Flash to be able to run on iPads. The reason that the rationale behind it was because Flash is a programmatical language, you know, like, I don't know, C or COBOL or those kind of things, is that it poses a security threat to the iPad. So as a result of that, basically, is they don't allow it. So what happens is that's when you start hearing anyone like, oh my God, if Flash isn't going to run on the iPads, we've been using Flash for 10 years, what are we going to use? So, you know, up comes the resurgence of a later version of HTML called HTML5, and actually is that the video format that's being used within HTML5 so that it'll run on an Apple is actually MP4. The best way to think of MP4s is, you know, MP3s, those things that you put on the on your iPods, or you know that basically let you listen to songs. Well, MP3 is audio only. MP4 is audio and video. So that's really what you're getting to is when you hear this, all this HTML5, MP4 stuff. What I would suggest to you is, assuming you're non-technical, is just ignore all that stuff and think of it as will work on the iPad, won't work on the iPad. And that will sort of give you that distinction. The next is SCORM. SCORM is a 5-letter acronym for Shareable Content Object Reference Model. Okay, now why do you care about SCORM? The truth is you may not, unless you're a content producer that you want to have run within corporations. What SCORM is it's an industry standard for content that communicates with an LMS system. What that means is think about e-learning that you've taken in the past. Some of them, the e-learning has questions built right into it. So, you know, you'll get 3 pretty pictures with all the eye candy coming in and out on screens 1, 2, and 3. Sort of screen 4 comes up, and it asks you a question. Which of the following is the right answer, given what you just learned on the first 3 screens? And then you press on, you know, number 2. And it comes up and says, great, you answered it correctly. What SCORM does is SCORM allows the LMS system, once you finish doing that e-learning video, to capture the fact that you answered that question correctly. Now, how do you put things in SCORM format? Don't worry about the format or any of that stuff. Is that if you're using iSpring or Camtasia or any of the main e-learning development tools, there's a button you can press that says Create in SCORM format. You just press that button. Now, the reason that I want you to know this is if you're producing e-learning that you want to run on your LMS, but what happens is if you also have corporate clients, let's say you land a deal with, oh, I don't know, Bose, or you know, whatever big corporation it is, General Motors, and you talk to the human resource people in General Motors, and they say to you, gee, you know what? I love your class on coaching leadership. I would really like to have that class available to my 10,000 managers working here at GM. We would like to take your e-learning, and is it possible to get it in SCORM format and put it in our LMS package? That's when that becomes important to you, is when you want to basically license or have corporations use your e-learning content on their LMS system. Okay, that finishes our techie tour. I hope that you found, we have plenty more to do, but I'm hoping that that gives you a good general background of the jargon and terms that you're going to be seeing as you dig more into LMSs. It's like when you buy a new computer, they say, well, we have this, it has this much RAM and this much of this and this much of that, and it's seek time on disk speed, blah, blah, blah. And you sort of have to have a vague understanding of what that stuff is to know that if you're getting a little machine or a big one. Same thing. So from here, now let's move to some general LMS features. Now what these are basically features that exist virtually in all LMSs. It's what I alluded to at the in our opening screen. By the way, remember, if you have any questions, feel free to fire them off to Kathy, and or just if you're tired of hearing my voice and you want to hear hers for a minute, again, as many questions as you have, we'll be glad to field. But anyway, from an administration perspective, what your LMS basically does is it allows you to for class creation and content. Now, as I'm saying class creation, that means somewhere you're going to have to say, I have a class on coaching, or whatever your class is on. So you have to be able to go into the system, you have to be able to type it in, you have to be able to enter the description. A great class on coaching does blah, blah, blah. So you have to be able to do that stuff. Second is you have to be able to upload your SCORM or Flash or MP4 packages that you've created with your e-learning into the platform so that it can be there when people want to see it. The next is content management, and we actually have a slide on this one later, but at a high level what the content management is that if there's ancillary material related to the class, you want to upload booklets or additional writings, a copy of your ebook, whatever else you've written, all that other information that's sort of ancillary to the class that you'd like people, job aids is another example, that you'd like people to have associated with your class, that e-learning class that they can download and use on your own. The third item is student security. What that is people, you don't want to let the world in to see your e-learning. You only want to let people in who've paid for it. Now, that could be internally at a company, is basically just giving them, clicking at it that Joe Smith in accounting can take the advanced accounting class because he's taken the elementary accounting class. Or it could be is that someone comes in, puts in a credit card, pays their $39.95, and poof, you give it access to them online. And the last of which is system integration. System integration, namely the systems you want to connect to, I alluded to one case of it earlier, where you had that if you were in a corporate environment, you would want your LMS to have integration and basically share data with your HRIS system so that come performance review time is that the manager would know what classes the employee has taken. Now, what kind of systems you connect to is greatly differentiated by what your business model is and what you're using the LMS platform for. Next, delivery and tracking. Basically is for delivery, well, it has to serve up the e-learning. The student presses a button and poof, up has to come whatever you want to show them. It could be the, a video of what sort. It could be a test. It could be whatever they're working on. It's when the student presses the button, it's the stuff that comes up. Next is collaboration tools. This is the second item we'll be talking about later. But for collaboration tools, it might be connectivity between the student and the professor, a way to get back and forth in an academic environment. In a corporate environment, what it may be is it may be social media tools, where it allows all of the people who've taken the class internally to go in and have discussion boards and such about questions and so on in the class. Next is class reviews and ratings. The student that took the class, the typical thing like on Amazon.com regarding books, or videos in YouTube, the 1 to 5 stars, the typical review stuff. Next is learning support tools. What those may be is self-assessments, or a more automated version of job aids. And lastly, it's used for usage collection. That's what the tracking piece is. Namely, all that stuff that people are doing is that you want to have those statistics in the system for a number of different reasons. Again, depending on what your business model is, and we'll talk about some of those as we begin to differentiate into the specific areas or specific types of systems based on your business model. Now, reporting. All right, what kind of reporting do you want to do? We've talked a lot about it so far with the tracking of the delivery and who's getting what. Basically, is you're going to track it by student, namely, what classes has Kathy Liska taken? Another example is by class. What students have taken the advanced negotiation class? By group, this is an interesting one that could be in a couple of different ways, but what the group is that who within Division A of my company has taken this class, or what business analysts have taken the Introduction to Business Analysis class. Another way it could be is if your system is being used for certification purposes, is of the people who are certified on this piece of equipment or in this methodology or whatever it is, who's taken the follow-up training. So what it is, it's basically a categorization of groups of people based on specified criteria. Now, why do people want this? And why is it important for you to know about this? Because first of all, it's used for vendor selection. For those of you who are looking to make money by having e-learning, and a company, say, well, let me say, I picked on the Ford end, like Procter & Gamble. Let's say you get them as a client, God willing, and they say, gee, you know what? We really like your coaching class, and we want to put the e-learning on our LMS system. And they do it, and they give you a check for 10 grand, and then you don't do anything for that 10 grand other than you've already, done the work, built the e-learning. E-learning is a wonderful thing, by the way, because once you give them access to it, you don't do anything else except collect the check. But anyway, is what they're going to do during the course of the year is they're going to go in and they're going to say, hey, how many people have taken this class? Is it worthwhile? Are the statistics related to who's taken it that they like it? Because you know what? Next year when it comes to renewal and you're going to want them to write you a check for another 10 grand, they're going to want to look at the statistics and see if anybody actually used it. Next is department cross-charge. If let's say that, yes.
Interesting question came in as you were talking about that. What kinds of programs are companies looking to buy? So I think when you were talking about, Procter & Gamble buying that class, what kinds of programs are people looking to buy?
Okay, great question. The answer to that actually is it depends. I'll talk about my own company. Is that what Manager Mechanics does is we specialize in IT leadership development. Basically, it's soft skill for techies. We teach, our tagline is we help today's technologists become tomorrow's leaders. So for us, what we're selling them is a number of things. We have some clients, all of our content, what we do, and this again is just sort of our business model, is what we do is all of the classes that we provide in classroom format, namely instructors standing up in front of a group. We also provide all of our core content in e-learning format, formalized e-learning, which is basically, it's the same PowerPoint slides with all the appropriate e-learning candy coming in, eye candy coming in and off of it, bullet points rolling and stuff like that with voiceover. So given that we have both of those models, what corporations are looking for is it depends on the corporation. Some of them just want our classroom training, and what we tell them is, hey, if you hire us to do classroom training, everyone who takes that training gets 90 days of free access to our e-learning of the same material. Why? For blended learning purposes and things along that line, studying, certification, etc. So we find that it gives the company really nice warm fuzzies, that's a great feature. It helps them justify the expense for us of coming in and doing the teaching as an added feature, and it's a differentiator for us from a sales perspective. Other companies say, you know what, is that we're not interested in classroom. What we'd like to do, we have people all over the world, we just want your e-learning content. Now, what that could be for us, it's soft skills type classes, negotiation, dealing with difficult techies, problem solving and decision making, stuff like that. But it would be whatever your content is interested in, is based on. You know, the idea for us with e-learning and why we did it and then why we built our platform, we built our own obviously, and then we began marketing it. The reason we did it is because we could say to a company, is any format you want to get it in. You want to do a webinar, you want to do classroom, you want to do e-learning, you want to do a combination of them all, we can do it. So that's what companies are looking for. Also, the advantage of doing it in having your stuff in an e-learning format is it's a less expensive way for you to get it, for a company to bring in your features and then hopefully backsell and bring you in for additional things. Anyway, back to this. Hope that answered your question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Next is that department cross-charge. Like everything else, if let's say Procter & Gamble paid 10 grand for your software, they estimate that 1,000 people are going to use it inside the company, then every time someone logs in from Department A in sales or Department B in IT or wherever it is, they cross-charge 10 bucks to their cost center to pay for the software. The next is career advancement, is that if you can talk, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one later, but basically is that many companies, is if you can get tied into this as a vendor, this is a really cool thing, whereas they need certain types of training based on certain job levels. So basically junior accountant, accountant, senior accountant, principal accountant, accounting supervisor, accounting manager. If for each one of those pieces in the job family, you can get your e-learning or classroom tied to the promotions of what you need, sort of just-in-time training, go from one to the next, then e-learning, LMS can help manage this, and also it's tied into career advancement. And the last is, as mentioned before, is justification for expense. Hey, it's coming time to use to pay Manager Mechanics another 10 grand for their e-learning software this year. Has anybody been using it? And they use that as the justification and the basis. Now
and
let's
Eric,
get into, yes.
Before you move on, here's another question for you. What are the most widely used LMSs out there, and do they provide an evaluation method for content?
Let me begin by saying the evaluation. The evaluation, you know, it's funny is that I actually read this in Chief Learning Officer magazine about, I think it was in the May or June issue, and I actually love it. It says when it comes to, and this is about learning in general, is that there's return on expectation and return on investment. And those are two ways that training in general tends to be judged. The return on expectation was, I'm expecting a really cool class and to learn a bunch of stuff, and then you go there and say, wow, I learned even more than I thought I was going to. That's return on expectation. That's when you get all, highly agree, on all of your, on your student evaluations. That's on the expectation. What's the holy grail in training in general, quite frankly, is the true return on investment. Is that how do you tie it back? If a corporation is putting money into training, how do they know that that money is having a return of investment of 15 or 20 or whatever the ROI percentage return is? That's much more difficult. Companies do it different ways. What most companies do, quite frankly, is they just try to do something that says, did it help the, the core objectives of the company, and if so, anecdotally how. People would agree or disagree with me on, the level of ROI analysis you can do on training, but generally speaking, that's what I'm seeing out there. But it is definitely the holy grail on measuring that. Mostly it's did I like it or didn't I like it, the training itself. Now let's move to some specialized LMS capabilities. Now this is where we cut now. All right, we've been through all the introduction stuff. We've done the techie stuff. We've done the general features. Now let's talk about the stuff that basically differentiates them. Because the other half of the question Kathy just asked is what are the most popular systems? Well, the answer to that is it depends. is, and I'll give you a couple of high-level examples, and let me say, as I'm mentioning these firms, I have no connections with them or anything. They're just the ones that come to mind to answer the question. The academic use, the one that's used most heavily to my knowledge, again, this is anecdotal, I don't have statistics in front of me for it, but the academic model is very heavily, so the 800-pound gorilla there is called Blackboard. What Blackboard is it integrates a lot of academic features. It can do video classroom, all sorts of cool stuff like that. Another one you very often see in academic environments, in smaller environments, is Moodle, the one that I mentioned before. The reason is it's really geared for an academic environment. It has classes and sections and students and test banks, and upcoming events and, all that kind of stuff that would be used in an academic environment. And by the way, let me say that others that are good that I'm not mentioning, it's not that I don't like them or they may not be great, it's just they're not coming to mind at the moment. On the corporate side, the ones you see are Saba, Oracle. In fact, if you have the full set of Oracle financials, I don't know if they still do, but they used to sort of throw in the LMS package for free to try to gain additional market penetration. ISP has one. Actually, where Oracle got it was from the old PeopleSoft products. Those are the biggies that come to mind in that market. For the independent provider use, is that is actually much more of a wide open market. The reason is that the features are different. The one that I'll say that I like the most, actually, if I can be self-serving, is eLearning 2, our platform. It was designed by an independent training company for independent trainers. That's what it does. The functionality is very, very different. Staples Corporation would not want my LMS system any more than I would want Saba or Blackboard. Would they handle the general stuff we talked about? Yes. Would it handle the specific things associated with my business model? No, and vice versa. Now, for corporate use, is that this is now, these three of the slides are the differentiation of each type of system. For corporate use, and I'll go through these sort of quickly because they'll be pretty obvious, is what you're going to want to do is you're going to have you want to have classes from multiple providers. That whole SCORM thing, they want to load my SCORM for IT leadership development. They want to load your SCORM for coaching, for coaching classes, etc. And what they want is connectivity to their internal performance review system, to their HRIS, which I'd mentioned previously, talent management, which is basically who in the company has what skills so we can move them around, payroll if additional certifications or classes are either reimbursable or people get additional pay for having taken those, the accounting system for cross charges from department to department, and very heavily if there's industry-specific certifications or compliance systems. Where you see that one the most, actually, is related to in biomedical and healthcare, because what happens is technicians, if they're going to use an X-ray machine, for example, they're an X-ray technician, they have to take these 5 classes over the course of this 2-year period, or they lose their designation. That's what I mean by certification and compliance-based. In academia,
Eric,
yes.
Let me jump in. So you're talking about some uses in academia and corporate. I've got 2 questions that have come in, and it may be you want to address them now or you may want to wait a couple more slides. So one of them is, and they're closely related. One is LMS useful for a solopreneur coach? And if so, how would you use it? And then the other one is having a program in an LMS realistic in terms of cost? And I think that's someone coming from the same place, a solopreneur or small business owner. So wherever you want to fit that in.
Well, let me answer that by saying on this slide for academia, it does all of those things that you did when you were in college and high school. How's that? Student grading and whatnot. The reason I'm saying that is it brings us to our next slide. Whoever asked that, thank you. That was a great segue into exactly where we're going here. As an independent provider, The things that you're going to want your LMS to do is, and then we'll talk about, I'll cut back into the costs a little bit of it, is one is you need something easy to operate by non-technical people. Because independent providers, you don't have a whole IT staff behind you who can figure out how this works. Next, you need a security model that works with both B2B and B2C, business to business and business to customer. Because you may have corporate clients who come and say, hey, I'm Procter & Gamble, I want 500 people to have access and you to do training for. Or it might be, Joe Schmo calls up and says, gee, can I have access to your e-learning? And you want them to be able to enter a credit card, pay their $50 and get access. The next is, sort of ties into, you need an internal model in it that allows it to be flexible with both, with different corporate clients. They all want different things. Next is it facilitates reporting by client and lets them do the reporting. The last thing that you want to do is be in the reporting business as a sole practitioner where you get a call from Procter & Gamble every Friday saying, anyone tap into your LMS and use your software, use your classes this week? You want them to be able to self-serve and go in. And you want it to be a cloud-based model, tying back to the introduction, so you connect to it like you do Gmail. You don't want to be buying software and putting it on a server and finding a place. You just want to connect to it and be done. And for connectivity, you may want it to connect into your CRM system if you're using Salesforce or something like that to be able to do your marketing. Your accounting system, if anybody is using, for example, what's it called, QuickBooks. If someone bought something for $50 directly online, you want it to be in your QuickBooks as a revenue. Maybe emailing and you want it connected maybe into something like the webinar today, GoToMeeting. Can it connect into that so that anyone, for example, who takes this webinar could potentially automatically get e-learning on the topic or something to that effect? From a cost perspective, what it comes down to is your model, your business model. Is that there's a number of, from a cost perspective, there's some stuff you can get out there for free. But what free is basically is you serve up, you can say, put something up there and they take 20 or 30% of it if someone buys it. It's their model, it's their business. When you refer to that page, what it's doing, it's coming up with yours and potentially all your competitors. In the 100 to 300 or $400 range per month is that what you'll get is you'll get something that's branded to you. That will provide you all of the type of features that you would particularly need. So, for example, say the $200 to $300 range per month, and that would give you, support, all those kind of things that you would want to be able to do it. Credit card access, working with individuals as well as corporations, hosting your videos, the ability to do other things along that line. So now, does it make sense to you to do it for a cost perspective? Depends on your business model as a sole practitioner. What I found with e-learning, quite frankly, is I've made more money because of it than from it. What I mean by that is, yes, I've made some pretty good money from it, but when I walk into a corporate client and I say to them, yeah, you have 50 people at your corporate headquarters, and then you have another 25 people that you want to take this sprinkled around the globe, I'll tell you what, for the 50 people in corporate headquarters, let me come in for 2 full days of training. I'll do 2 days, a Monday and a Tuesday, 25 of them on Monday, 25 of them on Tuesday, and so that everyone around the world can still get access to exactly the same material. I'll give them the e-learning content, which is slide for slide consistent from a material perspective. I've gotten sales because of that. So it's also by bundling in the email. Bundling in the e-learning with it. So if you can do those kind of things, if your material is in PowerPoint now, it's reasonably easy. You can just do some voiceover to it and some things, a little bit of eye candy through PowerPoint automation, and then poof, you have e-learning. So it's very doable. It's very cost appropriate if you can build it into your model as a way to make revenue on it. It's worked for me, and it's actually a really cool model and a differentiator. Next 3 slides, I'd just like to say is some advanced features. Gamification. What that is you probably heard a lot about it. E-learning platforms, well, there's an example our e-learning platform, has it's gamification enabled. It lets you do levels and mastery and points and leaderboards. It's all of that social media stuff associated with the combination of games and student interaction. It's actually quite cool stuff. Next is curriculum management. I referred to that earlier as being tied to the idea of if you can get your training material. You develop 7 or 8 e-learning classes, one for like junior accountant, and so on, is that the LMS system would track then which of your pieces of e-learning their people have to take in order for them to get promoted. You can bet that your e-learning is going to be used more often, and that as a result of it, once it's tied in, that becomes an ongoing annuity for you for like virtually forever, because people are going to take it because they're motivated, because they want to get promoted, which drives up the usage of it, which increases the statistics, which gets you paid. Next is student dashboards. Student dashboards are a feature actually with leaderboards and to one extent within gamification. What they also are is that they let the students go in themselves. What classes have I taken? What should I take? If I want to get that extra 50 cents an hour in my hourly job, let's say I work in a restaurant, all right, I have to take this class on food preparation online. So it's those types of things. It's basically a it's the learning management administrator for the individual student of what they need to take. Next is your LMS should run on lots of stuff. You know, it's the operating system basically is all of those are pretty easy. We'll all work with Flash except for the Apple stuff. However, there's some nuances regarding, you know, videos versus other things that make it a little more or less easy to see and use depending on the platform you're in. But given you know what your constituency is and where you want it to be able to run. Next is social media. Is that it can be hooked in, say, for example, with yours. If you want people interacting within your platform, keeps bringing them to your website, well, then put in blogs and discussion boards and you know, virtual classroom components and wikis that brings them back to you. Because if they're back to you, you're building your community. And while they're there, they may say, gee, I didn't know that they offered a class on this. Maybe I'll put in my credit card, get another 50 bucks. Now, just some quick things to consider if you're going to be buying one of these systems. And you'll see that these are all question-based. I won't go through them all, you know, in detail because that in itself could be a half-day class. But if I'm correct, Kathy will be posting this on YouTube, and you'll be able to come and see these questions, you know, as you really go to do an analysis. But part one, know thyself. What is your business case? Why do you want to buy an LMS, which gets to Kathy's last question? How can you integrate it into your business model? What's your return on investment? So it's basically you have to know why you want it and really think about it. How are you going to market it? How can you use it into your current constituency as a back sell product? How can you use it to introduce yourself? You have 50 clients you've done business with that you'd like to reconnect up with, and you want a reason to call them. Call them and say, hey, you know, we have our stuff in e-learning. I don't know if that'd be of value to you as another option. It's a reason to go and call people maybe. But whatever your business justification is. Next is what do you want? You want to separate your needs and your wants. I need it to do A, B, and C, and it'd be really cool if it also did this. What this is your requirements analysis of the specific features of the things that you'll want in your system. And again, these platforms are very, very different, and you want to make sure that it gets one that meets your needs. Next is know your budget. I mean, realistically, if you're looking for something for free of quality, you know, there's some stuff out there where you can put up your e-learning content, but probably not going to meet your needs or your business model, and it's going to take people away from your site, which generally speaking isn't a good thing. So is that know what your budget is, be willing to put a little time and a little money, and also, you know, do you need tools? have. Do you have Camtasia? For example, iSpring. I use it. It's like a 350. Don't quote me on the amount, but I think about 350 bucks. Lets me create Flash and HTML5 and all that stuff, and I do all the rest of it right in PowerPoint. Why? Because it meets my needs. Most likely, I would say, as a first pass would meet yours also. Know the technology is, I talked about installed or cloud. I would recommend to everyone here, unless you're working in a big company, you don't want to play with getting installing this stuff on your own PC and doing all that. Ugh, get cloud-based. It'll make life easier. But do you want it to be open source or commercial? You can get the open source stuff, with a monthly payment to someone who's maintaining it for you. That's cloud-based also. And what do you want it to connect with? Do you want it to connect with Salesforce, or do you want to be able to download a file of who's used it, or connect it to QuickBooks, or what are the things that you want it to be able to connect to? Next is product evaluation, which is basically, know your options, which is of all of those things that you've seen, which vendors meet your needs. And one thing I will tell you is that the vendors will, if the vendors aren't particularly straightforward in working with you when you're asking them questions about buying their product, don't expect them to be too straightforward with you after you've already paid and you're signed up. Because if there's ever a time that the vendors are going to be helpful to you, it will be before you sign the check instead of after you sign the check. So just sort of know that. I mean, that's just regular vendor management. Part 6 is make a decision. If you're the one making the decision, then make sure your stakeholders are involved. If not, then, you want to be informed. You want to make sure you're doing the right thing. Do a pilot of it with one client, or put one class up there. And by all means, whatever you sign with them, make sure if it doesn't meet your needs, particularly if you're not too used to this stuff, make sure there's an exit clause. That you can exit within 90 days if you don't like it, or, something to that effect to save you from, signing up for the 2-year membership and then deciding you don't like it there. From here, I'd like to leave you with one final quote and then pass you back to Kathy. And what it is just regarding e-learning in general and actually just learning in life. And it's a quote by Henry Ford. Anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or at 80. From here, I'd like to turn it back to Kathy, and I'd like to thank you so much for hanging in with us during today's webinar.
Eric, thank you so much. That was fabulous information. And actually, thanks for flipping this up. One of the questions is, how can we find out more about what he offers? And so your website pops up there. Eric does have a learning management system available, cost-effective, that kind of thing. So a couple of you have asked about that. And certainly you can reach out to Eric and get more information on it and find out, gee, is it the right one of all those different options for you? So thank you for that. Eric, we are getting lots of comments in the question panel, people saying thank you, how much they appreciate the definitions, just the understanding, so educating some of us non-techies. So I wanted to pass that on. A couple of you are asking about the access to today's webinar. Here's what's going to happen. We will post the recording of this on our YouTube channel, and then we will email you a link directly to it on the YouTube channel so that you have a chance to go back and look at it again. And as Eric mentioned, when you're in that process of saying, okay, is this the right thing for me, all of those slides with those questions are in there, and you can stop a YouTube recording right on that slide, go through those questions and do your evaluation. So that's definitely coming to you. Thank you, everyone, for your participation today, for your interest. I believe we have covered the questions that came in. Some things did scroll by kind of quickly, so if you have something else, please feel free. And Eric, again, lots of thanks coming in, lots of appreciation for the information and the insight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, and did you want to add an extra comment there, Eric?
Oh, I was just going to say is that as a favor to you, Kathy, and your constituency, whether they're interested in my platform or somebody else's, is feel free to drop me an email or a call, and, I'll answer it for you if I can.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. definitely appreciate it, and we appreciate all of you being here. Do let us know what else we can do to be helpful. In the meantime, I will go ahead and close this out. I know many of you have additional things scheduled in your day, so watch for that email, and thank you, all of you. So thanks, Eric.